What's up, everybody? Moving to another DID video. I just recorded 2 of these, so I might not be as energetic as the first 2. I am excited to talk about this, though, because it is a very valid and important part of, having DID. So the other 2 videos I did were, a video on Anaheim Pan and a video on Love Lane City. This one is more of a basic, educational thing. We're going to talk about fictives. So what is a fictive? A fictive is essentially it's an other that's based off of a physical character, a fictional character. This can come from anything, books, media, any kind of media, movies, video games. It can basically be anything, which I think is very interesting. As long as it's not a real person, it can be considered a fictive. So, and I don't know a lot about this myself, so I do have my phone here, so I'm going to read you some stuff from my phone, because honestly, I'm still learning too, so this is a learning experience for all of us. And I'm sorry I'm not the most knowledgeable stuff. If you want somebody who's more knowledgeable about it and can generally tell you without looking at a phone or a page or personal experience, or just personal experience like me, I would definitely suggest you go over to Dissociated. They are way better at this than me. I'm just kind of going off personal experience, and I'm learning through this. Just little disclaimer there. How do fictive alters and DID systems form? Introjects are alters that are based off outside people or characters. Fictional introjects, specifically, are based off of fictional characters. These characters can be from television shows, movies, books, fantasy, and any other form of fiction. There you go. That's basically the long and short of what a fictive is. Why do fictive alters form? This is something that I've been wanting to know too. Fictive alters in DID form to serve a purpose. While that purpose is not always known, it is possible that the DID system needed the qualities of that fictional character and internalized them to form the fictional introject in response to trauma. Fictives can also form to disrupt the system. While fictives often form in childhood, people with DID, i.e. people like me, can form new alters at any time, especially in response to recent trauma. Now, that's actually really interesting, because I've been dealing with this for a long time and I didn't know what it was. And some of my alters are relatively new. They kind of popped up in response to certain things happening. So honestly, that does make a lot of sense. Myths about fictional introjects. There are a few assumptions that people have about fictional introjects in DID. We're just going to go with fictives. It's easier to say. But the reality is that there are no concrete characteristics that all fictives possess. So not all of them are the same. You could have somebody who has kind of the same thing, but they're different, essentially. So this is something that's interesting to me, because you could have 2 people who have, say, I don't know, Pikachu as an alter, as a fictive. But one person's Pikachu will be very different from someone else's. That's something that I find very fascinating. One assumption that people make about fictives is that fictives are always positive. I will discuss that a little bit in depth in a little bit, because I happen to have a fictive. Fictives can have positive qualities, but they can also have negative qualities, engage in harmful or risky behavior. Some fictional introjects can be abusive and form as a way to continue traumatizing the system. So they're not always a good thing. Just want to make that really clear. There's another assumption that fictives are based entirely off of the fictional character. The reality is that fictives can have their own qualities and personalities apart from those of the fictional character. Some fictive alters can be predominantly similar to the character, while others take on just a few of the characteristics. They don't have to think, act, look, or feel in the exact same ways that the fictional character does. This doesn't make them any less valid. Fictional introjects, or fictives, aren't chosen purposely. Just like other dissociative identity disorder others, fictional introjects develop subconsciously for a reason. Fictives are not made up. They're not part of a game. Fictives are real. They can hold memories and experience trauma just as any other can. The controversy surrounding fictives and DID. Unfortunately, there is controversy even within the DID community surrounding the legitimacy and validity of fictional introjects in the DID systems. Some people believe that fictives are fake and cannot occur in the real DID system. Others believe that fictives exist, but only with certain limitations, It's important to validate that fictional intertexts or fictives are a real part of DID systems. People are quick to judge fictives as real or fake. Yet this judgment doesn't exist for other types of alters. What do you know? There's prejudice within systems. Who knew? Fictives deserve the same treatment as any other or part of you. They are real, they're valid, do not forget that. So basically, long and short of it, TLDR, TLDL, too long didn't listen, fictives do exist. They are an important part of your system, and each one can be different. Like I stated with the Pikachu analogy, there could be two people with the same one who have them for different reasons. One person could have a very specific Pikachu as a protector, and the other one could have it as a persecutor, or all I know. I'm not sure. I don't judge anyone else's system by what they have. I personally do have what appears to be effective in my system in the form of Bastiel. I've mentioned him in the Dark Zone video, but I didn't get too into detail. I'm not going to get too into detail here either. He has his own video that I'm kind of planning out. I'm going to be working on everybody's later. But honestly, he seems to be based heavily off of the Nine-Tailed Fox from Naruto. He's behind a large cage, he's a giant-looking demonic creature, some kind of animalistic being, and he does behave very similarly. He can be very cold, but he can also be very open. He does have his own personality in a way where he is a protector. He used to be a persecutor, just like Hans. But honestly, at this point, he's more into ensuring that there is safety when he's called upon. For the reason he was created, I'm not entirely certain myself. Like, obviously, there's a lot of others in my system that I don't know why they're here. But they are, and I love them all the same. And originally, I started to wonder if there were more fictives in my system. There could be down the road. I really don't know. And that's the interesting part, is that you don't know what you're going to need because you don't know what life has in store. Unless you're the Psychic Twins. I'm kidding. But honestly, well, not about what they do. I've watched their videos. I'm kind of silly like that. I hope I do a video of them later. That could be really interesting. That's down the road. Not anytime soon, I'm sure. But anyway, the point I want to make is that these are legitimate. Like, this is something that is divided amongst the community, but it is very real. And I feel like we should be accepting if somebody says, like, oh, I have an other that's literally Black Panther, like, and he's a protector. Say, cool. You know your brain better than anybody else. And that's the thing with DID that I find very fascinating, is that everyone's system is very different. And I'm starting to realize that the more I look into other people's systems. One of my friends, who I talk to almost on daily and has been helping me with my Instagram, I believe her system's called the Crazy System. A lot of people don't like that name. I think it's great. But her system is essentially a small island. Mine is a freaking country. And it's so freaking different between the two. And I've seen people who have entire worlds. There are people who have small towns, small islands, a small cave or village. DID groups are huge in this sort of thing because people love to share what their inner world is like. Which is why I started the explaining, the Cerebra system videos. Because I want to share what my world is like, and it is so weird to people to hear about the way my system is, because it is drastically different. It's something that a lot of people weren't expecting when I brought up that I have a system. But honestly, I don't think I'd ever change it. That being said, because each person's system is different, just like everyone's brain is different, that means we're all going to have different others, different alters, whatever you want to call them. So it's really not our place to judge if somebody has Black Panther, or a Nine-Tailed Fox, or a fucking Pokemon, or Superman. I think I've heard someone at one point say they had Superman as theirs because he was a very protective person. There was also a person who mentioned to me once they had the Hulk as a fictive, which is actually cool, and I'm jealous. But they also said he was very negative as well because he's the source of their anger when they switch and everything. And that does bode into what I read. They do have negative qualities. There's not always a good thing. Like, I feel like no other is strictly positive, but they can be helpful. They're there to help you in some way. Which makes this really hard to explain and very confusing. Getting back to Bastille, though, he's generally a positive influence, but he does have his negative moments, especially when he's mad. And a little work story that I was going to share with the Bastille video, but I figured now's a good time. I used to work Party City. I think I've mentioned this story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it's a good story. But it was my first job, and the manager was up my butt cheeks for every little freaking thing because I was a temporary worker. It's to be expected. But it was my first job. I thought, oh, I'm going to have a job at the end of this. They actually wanted to fire me a week and a half in because I collapsed. My legs collapsed on the job. I was not able to stand up very easily because I was so shaky. Like, I was not used to working those long hours, multiple days in a row, constantly on the move. Like, I was not used to it. So my legs gave out. I freaked out. I accidentally yelled at someone. And I was told that you do it again, you're fired. Which made me mad. And in turn, made him mad before I even knew who or what he was. I just thought, oh, it's just me being angry. That is the very first time, though, that I've ever seen red. Like, physically seen red when I'm mad. And back then, Bastille was a lot more violent. He essentially told me to go rip her head off. Either like, verbally or literally. And I said, no, I'm not about to go to jail for this job. And, yeah, that was kind of interesting. So, no, like, fictives are not always a good thing. Sometimes they're a very negative influence. Sometimes they tell you to do things that you shouldn't do, or they try to influence you in some way. And it goes with the disrupting the system sort of deal. Like, and back then I didn't really have a lot of control over when I switched. Like, I didn't even know what it meant. I just thought, oh, maybe I'm some kind of mutant or some shit. Like, I literally used to think that. I was a very strange teenager. But it doesn't mean they can't change. And I think that's something that's really important, is that any other can change based on what you give them. And this is for any other video, any alter, any role that they fill, they can change. Negative self-talk about them can make a very negative impact, which is something I realized with Lulu, is that I was constantly scolding her for causing trouble. You know, making me, like, do things that I wouldn't do normally that were embarrassing to me or shocking to me. You know, stuff like that. That's just like, why would you do this? And that's something I don't want to get too far into, but it was very embarrassing what we did when she switched out. And she continued to do it because I kept scolding her and getting mad about it, but instead of talking to her. And the same thing goes for any fictive, any normal other. If you see them in a negative light, that's how they're going to act. That's how they're going to be perceived. They're going to be seen as, oh, so they see me as evil, they see me as cruel, they see me as vindictive or whatever. Well, I guess that's how I'm going to be, because that's how they see me. They want me to be that way? Fine, I'll be that way. They're kind of like one of those, what are they called? Contrarians, I think is what that is. It's kind of like the opposite of that. Like, you tell a contrarian to do something, they're like, well, now I don't want to do it. It's like, I don't know, it's something kind of along those lines. Essentially of, oh, that's how you want me to be? Well, fine. It's like Mother Gothel. That's how a better example. Mother Gothel from Tangled. You want me to be the bad guy? Fine. Now I'm the bad guy. Like, that's kind of how it is. And I think that's what a lot of people with DID need to start understanding, is that what you say to these others and what you feel about them affects them directly. When I started showing Hans a little bit more affection and talking to him more, he's still a persecutor, but he's lessened his anger. He's feeling less hateful. You know, he's generally more open. He still causes me a little bit of turmoil now and then, but communication is key. And I think that's what's really the main message of this, besides learning about fictives, is, treat your system well. honestly, like, treat yourself well, treat your system well, and it'll work wonders for you. Treat your system badly and let it run rampant over you, and you're going to have a really, really hard time. You know, if I were to treat Bastille like I used to this day, I would have probably already been in jail. Because I would have hurt somebody. I would have had less self-control and done something I would have regretted. And anytime I get angry at anything, there's this wave of regret that hits me, and I feel like crap afterwards. If we were still acting the way we used to, I wouldn't feel any. Because he wouldn't. And, you know, and I think that's something that goes for a lot of people who have others that are like this. But through communication and all kinds of other things that I went through, he is essentially a protector now. And he is willing to help defend me, defend the system, defend the rest of the others against things that would hurt us or make us feel less than we are. And that's great to me. And I love it. So I would not change him for the world. That being said, that's all I really have to say about Fictives. It wasn't a whole lot to say. It was very descriptive with what that was. All I did was just search it in the search bar, and there you go. Anyway, thank you so much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. I always do. If you like what I do here, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps me out a lot with this algorithm stuff going on. It is a mess. You know, you're beautiful, you're valid, and you're important. That's very, very, very important to me and everyone up here. And I will see you in the next video that I make. So until then, goodbye.